Hey, it's Lee here. How you doing today? Wanted to make a video this afternoon about rehearsing and learning your routines. And I know I cover this a little bit in the Ventriloquism 101 videos on the script writing and joke telling portion, but I wanted to expand on that today with like 5 bullet points of things that I hope will help you to learn your routines quickly and be more comfortable when you perform. So let's get right into it. Number one, and this is kind of the biggie, and this is my personal opinion. You can do, whatever you think is best for you, but personally, I'm not a big fan of using cue cards, sticky notes, cheat sheets, stuff like that. I really advocate for memorizing your routines if at all possible. Now, if you want to break your routines up into 2 or 3 little segments and have some bullet points on a card that just reminds you which segment you're going into, that would be okay. But to have a bunch of jokes written out on cards and then trying to use those during a live show, I just don't think is a really good idea. I really think you should try to memorize if at all possible. And a couple of reasons. If you memorize your routine and you know it frontwards, backwards, upside down, and you're doing a show, if you get distracted for some reason, you have a heckler in the front row, or somebody laughs weird, or chair falls over, or waiter drops a tray of dishes or whatnot, it's really easy to find your place again because you have the thing memorized. And that probably wouldn't happen if you were using cue cards, because you'd have to kind of think about what was the joke I just told, and you might get a little bit lost. Another example would be, let's say you have a song memorized that you know, and you're driving in your car, and it's not playing on the radio. You're just singing the song because you know it. And for some reason, your cell phone rings, or you hear a car honk at you, and you get distracted for a minute, and you stop singing. As soon as that distraction is over, typically you jump right back into where you left off at in the song. It's because you have it memorized. So that's the benefit, I think, of memorizing your routines, is knowing it so that you won't get lost. And it also helps minimize stage fright, which I've talked about before. If you're prepared and have your routine committed to memory, you can pretty much walk on stage with confidence that you're going to get through the thing and not forget a lot of the pieces of it because you have it memorized. And sometimes I think if you're writing out your jokes and things on little cheat cards, that takes away from the flow of the presentation because you're continually referencing something else. And depending on how good you are at going from the card back to the crowd, either you can keep the act running smooth. My guess is that it's going to have some hiccups and delays in it, because you'll say a joke with the puppet, and then you got to glance down for a second to see where you're at, then you come back up with the next joke, and that causes some dead time in your routine, which you don't want to have. You want it to flow smooth and conversationally and have it go from beginning to the end. So again, my preference is to try to memorize your routines when you can. So that's point number one. Next point is to always make sure that you have a logical story to your routine, or a theme, which I've talked a little bit about before, but you want to have your bits or your jokes connected somehow so that one rolls in to the next and that it makes sense. That makes it so much easier to memorize than just having a bunch of jokes you're telling one right after the other that aren't related at all, because you won't be able to remember. It's going to be very difficult to memorize that kind of a routine. Let me give you an example. Let me grab a sip of water here. An example is that Doc Wilson in my show has a line where he says something to the effect of, "My nephew swallowed my fountain pen." And I say, "Oh, wow, that could be dangerous. What did you do?" And he says, "Well, I had to start using a pencil." So in my mind, I know that the next joke coming up is connected to the word pencil somehow. And it so happens that the next joke, I ask Doc how old he is, and we talk about birthday candles. So in my memory, I've got a candle is kind of like a little stick, and a pencil is like a stick. So it's very easy for me to remember that those two jokes go right after each other. So the joke would kind of go, Doc Wilson says, "Yeah, Lee, my nephew swallowed my fountain pen." I say, "Well, it's dangerous. What did you do?" He says, "I had to start using a pencil." And then I say, "Oh, well, do you mind if I ask you how old you are, Doc?" And he says, "No, go ahead. I'm 93." And I'm like, "Wow, amazing." He goes, "Yeah, I hurt myself blowing the candles out on my birthday cake last week." And I'm like, "Oh, really? What happened?" And he says, "Well, I got a double hernia and threw my back out." So again, using the pencil and the candle as an association between the two made it very easy to remember that those two jokes go with each other. And so you build on that with your routine. Have a logical flow, have a reason why one joke follows the next for that segment of your routine. And then maybe you have a different segment of your routine that has 6 or 7 or 10 jokes in it. You want to have those hooked together somehow in a logical order, following a story or a theme. I hope that makes sense. So that's a really good tip, I think. Next is when you are rehearsing, unless you're just in your car running the lines, as you're driving around, I would recommend that you have the puppet on your hand or on its stand, the figure that you're using. You'll be able to memorize your routines a lot faster if you're working with your puppet versus having the routine on a piece of paper and just trying to remember it like you were studying for a test, reading your line, reading the puppet's line, reading your line, reading the puppet's line, and trying to memorize it that way. If you have the dummy with you and you're having the conversation and use the puppet's voice, don't ever practice a routine with you talking in your voice for both of you and the dummy. Um, you know, Practice it like you're going to perform it with the puppet right there. Use the puppet's voice, and I think you'll find that you can memorize it a lot easier because you have the figure there with you. Because that's going to be kind of duplicated when you get on stage. You're not going to walk up on stage and read off of a sheet with no dummy. You're going to have a dummy with you. So you want to rehearse in the same way that you're going to perform. And I think that that will help you a lot. I've actually found that when I learn a routine and I have my puppet with me and I have the whole routine down and I have it the way I want it, if I set the puppet down and try to just do the routine without the dummy, sometimes I'll mess up because I've got it in my head that, I'm used to having the figure next to me. And, he kind of has his own lines. That might sound kind of weird, but it's almost like, once I have the figure there, it helps me remember what the next line is because the puppet is right there with me. So try to have the figure on your hand when you rehearse. That's another tip number 3 there or 4, whatever, who knows. Next up is audio record your routine. And most cell phones obviously have an audio record feature on them. If not, you can go to the Play Store or the iTunes Store and download an app to put an audio recorder on your phone, and then just read the routine into your phone. And again, use your voice and the puppet's voice the same way as if you were performing it live and audio record it. And then just listen to it over and over and over again. If you can connect it to the radio in your car, go ahead and do that. Play it through the speakers as you drive around. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can memorize something if you're listening to it. Again, it's the same thing as when you learned songs that you liked listening to them on the radio. You just hear them so much that over a period of time, they're committed to memory. And, I know songs from 40 years ago that I haven't heard forever, but when they come on the radio, I immediately recall all of the lyrics just because I memorized them. So that's a really good tip, is to audio record and then listen to it over and over, and you'll learn things really quickly. And then the final tip I have is to expand on the audio recording and to set your cell phone up in the camera mode on a little stand or prop it up against something and run through your routine with your dummy and video record it with your camera. And that not only gives you the opportunity to listen to the routine again, like you did with the audio recording, but it gives you the chance to look at what you're doing, how you're reacting to the puppet, how the puppet is interacting with you, making sure the puppet stays alive and he's looking the right way, and that you're trying to get as much life out of the figure as possible. And all of those things combined really can help you to learn your routine and get those memorized so that you can walk out on stage, be really confident that you're going to get through the whole routine without, stumbling over a lot of stuff. So those are 5 tips that I think will help you with your routines. And I'll have another video for you soon. So get back to practicing, and we'll talk to you again soon. See you.